Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Giles Gibson. Let's take a look at the headlines this hour. Germany says it will stick to its targets to phase out coal by 2030, despite plans to fire up coal power plants again. Western attempts to isolate Russia have no chance of success, claims the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Iran says the train has still not derailed in negotiations aimed at restoring the 2015 nuclear deal, despite new sanctions on the Islamic Republic. The UK is bracing for travel chaos with the biggest rail strike in decades, as 40,000 staff walk out. And England's Matthew Fitzpatrick holds off world number one Scottie Scheffler and Will Zalatoris to win the US Open. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. And 2 months after being re-elected as France's president, Emmanuel Macron has lost his majority in the French parliament. Ahead of polling over the weekend, Macron had urged the country to deliver a solid majority for his centrist coalition. But a strong performance by an alliance on the left and by the far right has dashed those hopes. To get a majority in the French National Assembly, Macron needed to win at least 289 seats out of the available 577. However, his ensemble grouping won only 245. And even though the left coalition also failed to claim an outright majority, they are celebrating the outcome of this result.
C'est une situation totalement inattendue.
It is a totally unexpected situation, absolutely unheard of. The collapse of the presidential party is total and no majority is presented. We have achieved the political objective that we had set ourselves in less than a month to bring down the one who with such arrogance had twisted the arm of the whole country, who had been elected without knowing what for.
De faire tomber celui qui avec autant d'arrogance.
All right, let's get some more analysis and break down some of these results with our correspondent in Paris, Ross Cullen, who's joining us live. Ross, thanks very much for being with us the morning after these results. Just walk us through how this election played out in France.
Well, we've got some news just in the last hour or so, Giles. The left-wing coalition, which did very well, the second biggest grouping in Parliament after last night's election, they've said that they're going to lay down a no-confidence vote in the first week of July. And if that gets a majority, so 289 MPs, that's one way to overthrow the incumbent government. Real pressure now coming on the Prime Minister. She managed to win her seat last night, but she's only been in the job for a month since being appointed by Emmanuel Macron after he himself won re-election. But overall, Giles, just disastrous election results for the Emmanuel Macron and his party from the majority, so his ensemble coalition, which brings together his party and some other allies as well. They have got 245 seats, so falling well short of the 289 that you need in the French Parliament in order to have a majority. He's now going to have to look to some of the opposition parties to maybe try to form a confidence and supply agreement, some kind of alliance. It really is a major shock for Emmanuel Macron. He had a majority during his first term in office. He's lost that majority right at the very start of his 5 years that lie ahead of him now in his second term in office. In terms of the breakdown, a major success, a historic night for the far right, Marine Le Pen's party securing 89 MPs. They had 8 in 2017, so a huge rise, more than 10 times the number of MPs now for this new legislature. And we mentioned previously the coalition on the left. They had a very good night, more than 100 seats for the 4 parties that ran together as one: the Greens, the Socialists, the Communists and the far left, France Unbowed, all agreed to stand just one united candidate in each constituency up and down France. So a good night for the left-wing coalition, a good night for the far right, and a bad night for Emmanuel Macron.
And Ross, you mentioned there that Macron had a majority in Parliament during his first term. What do these election results mean for, his agenda as he goes into his second term?
He's got quite a bold agenda. He's got a lot of domestic reforms he wants to get on with. He certainly cannot get on with those now, Giles. Looking at these election results, he's short of a majority that he needs to be able to pass those legislative reforms. He's going to have to work on maybe some kind of an alliance with the centre-right Conservatives, the Republican Party of former presidents Jacques Chirac and Nicolas Sarkozy. He could maybe try to work on a policy-by-policy basis with the left, particularly when it comes to his green and environmental plans. There's certainly some that are attractive to the young socialist, green-minded voters that flocked to Jean-Luc Mélenchon's left-wing coalition. Maybe his party could try to be a minority government. There could potentially be new elections as well. That's something that he could call. So there are different ways that he can work through this, but it certainly is going to be a time now of negotiations, horse trading, a lot of recriminations, calls by the far left and the far right for new elections, for the Prime Minister to be replaced perhaps. She's only been in the job for a month, but already calls perhaps if he wants to form a coalition with the Conservatives, that then the Conservatives would have first dibs on calling in a new Prime Minister from the centre-right factions of the government. So a lot going on, a lot at stake. What is not going to be easy for President Macron is to try to get on with his reform agenda, because now he is facing such a division in Parliament. It's not going to be as easy as it was during his first term in office.
All right, thanks, Ross, for that update from Paris. That was our correspondent, Ross Cullen, from the French capital, just giving us the latest on those election results in France. And there was another election on the other side of the world this weekend. Colombia chose a new president, Gustavo Petro, who defeated construction magnate Rodolfo Hernandez to become the country's first leftist leader. Take a look.
Colombia has elected its first leftist president. Former guerrilla Gustavo Petro rode to victory Sunday on promises of profound social and economic change.
We are writing history right now, a new history for Colombia, for Latin America, and for the world.
Petro won by more than 700,000 votes over construction magnate Rodolfo Hernandez, an unexpectedly wide margin. Hernandez conceded in a video posted on social media.
Today, the majority of citizens who voted have chosen the other candidate. As I have repeatedly stated, I accept the result, since this is how it should be if we want our institutions to be strong.
Petro is a former mayor of the capital city, Bogota, and is also a current senator. He has pledged to fight inequality with free university education, along with pension reforms and high taxes on unproductive land. However, experts say that a fragmented Congress where a dozen parties have seats will act as a check on Petro's proposals. The president-elect has also vowed to fully implement a 2016 peace deal with FARC rebels and seek talks with the still active ELN guerrillas. This campaign was Petro's third presidential bid. His victory adds Colombia to a list of Latin American countries that have elected progressives in recent years.
Let's get some other news now. And ahead of the upcoming Commonwealth summit, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that being a part of the group can boost a nation's economy. Johnson made the comments in an editorial he wrote for a British publication. He said that the so-called Commonwealth advantage knocks off 21% of the cost of trading between member nations. Johnson is also claiming that investment levels between member nations are 27% higher than between non-members. The UK Prime Minister also said the collective GDP of the bloc will increase by 50% in the next 5 years and will stand at almost $20 trillion. The Commonwealth Summit is being held in Rwanda this week. The East African nation was actually part of the German Empire and not the British, but it decided to join the Commonwealth in 2009. In the last few days, Rwanda and the UK, of course, have been in the news over the asylum flight controversy in this country. Last week, the first flight set to carry asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda as part of a deal between the two countries was cancelled. The grounding came after a European Court of Human Rights ruling that at least one of the asylum seekers should stay in Britain, as there were no guarantees for their legal future in Rwanda. Staying with UK news now, and this country is bracing itself for the biggest rail strikes in more than 30 years. There will be widespread disruption on the London Underground and railway services across the country throughout the course of this week. More than 40,000 workers are protesting against job cuts, and they're also demanding better salaries and improved working conditions. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, also known as the RMT, will strike for 3 days this week, resulting in only 1 in 5 trains operating and just severe disruptions across the network. The first of 3 24-hour walkouts by RMT members, including signallers, maintenance and train staff, will start just after midnight tonight. Union leader Mick Lynch has said that unions don't want to cause disruptions to people's lives. They're just trying to find a settlement in their ongoing dispute. He also said that if the government continues to cut jobs, employees will have to work more hours for less money. Reacting to the union's decision, the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has warned the RMT that the strikes could be disastrous for British industry. He also accused the union leader of causing inconvenience to millions of people throughout the country.
The strikes are completely unnecessary. It's going to inconvenience millions of people, students doing their GCSEs and A-levels, 17 different public exams, in fact, people trying to get to hospitals, to try to get to operations, perhaps that have been postponed during coronavirus. It is disastrous, and it's no way to behave on the railway.
Let's move over to the EU now, and the war in Ukraine has triggered a global energy crisis. Countries in Europe in particular are looking for alternative sources of gas supplies as they work on phasing out Russian fossil fuels. That's led to a new focus on fossil fuels, especially on coal. Austria's government is reportedly planning to reopen a previously closed coal power station in order to meet the country's ongoing energy demands, of course, as we head towards the winter later this year. Now, according to reports, Austrian authorities have now decided to get a station in the southern city of Melak back into action. The aim is to restart electricity production from coal amid this looming crisis. Now, that power station that I was talking about was closed in the spring of 2020, and it was the country's last coal-powered fuel station. The closure was part of reforms aimed at transitioning the country to renewable sources of energy. And it's not just Austria. Germany has also announced that it will take emergency measures to ensure that it can meet its energy needs later this year. As per reports, Berlin is now eyeing coal-powered plants as an alternative to Russian gas in electricity production. The governing coalition of Social Democrats, the Green Party and the Liberal FDP had vowed to wind down coal usage by 2030. The government is maintaining that it will stick to its coal exit strategy despite this crisis. Meanwhile, Russia's Gazprom has sharply reduced flows of natural gas via the Nord Stream pipeline to Western Europe. And that's driven up energy prices right across the continent in recent days. And although Gazprom has cited repair works in the Nord Stream pipeline, officials in Brussels are saying that it's part of Russian tactics to punish them for their support of Ukraine. Our correspondent Trent Murray sent us this report from Berlin. Take a listen.
I mean, we know it's having a big economic impact on the country. Certainly, economists have warned that if the EU was to switch off gas entirely from Russia, that it probably would put the 27-member bloc into a recession. And so that is why there are these very difficult diplomatic discussions happening about, how you can continue to support Ukraine and provide military weapons, but also find other alternative energy sources. Because, of course, Russia is making a lot of money in all of this. With gas prices so high, they are making an extraordinary amount of money, and that, of course, is helping their economy keep going despite sanctions. So that's why you've seen here, for example, the economy minister doing some trips recently to places like Qatar and Israel and Turkey, trying to find other parts of the world that could supply gas. But, of course, that takes time. The clock is ticking down. I suppose you could say winter is coming, to borrow a phrase from a famous TV show. And so that is why really it seems that for the German government, time is of the essence, which is why, really, through gritted teeth, they are deciding to power up those coal-fired power plants again, because they simply feel like they have no other choice. And I have to say, it would be a very difficult decision for Robert Habeck in particular, the man charged with all of this, because his political background is from the Green Party. They are against coal entirely, and yet faced with the real politic of governing, they are now having to say that despite that bitter pill, they are going to have to swallow it, because if they don't, Germany could really start to have some power outages or problems over winter.
Our correspondent Trent Murray reporting on some of the fallout from the war in Ukraine. Let's take a look at the latest from the conflict itself now. And President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has warned that Moscow might step up its attacks on the country. Take a listen.
Obviously, this week we should expect from Russia an intensification of its hostile activities, as an example, and not only against Ukraine, but also against other European countries. We are preparing and we are ready.
Now, last week, the European Commission recommended that Ukraine receive candidate status for EU membership. Meanwhile, Russian forces have concentrated their offensive in the Donbass, that's in the east of Ukraine. And a prime target of Moscow's eastern assault is the industrial city of Severodonetsk. On Sunday, Russia said that it had seized a village about 6 kilometers away from that industrial city. Shelling also intensified in other parts of eastern Ukraine. According to reports, 3 Russian missiles destroyed a fuel storage depot in Novomoskovsk. The strike triggered a massive explosion near the site and claimed at least 1 life. Videos obtained from the area show a dense plume of smoke rising from the bombed storage depot. Now, as the conflict goes on, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has warned that the war in Ukraine could last for years. Speaking to some German media, Stoltenberg said that we must prepare for the fact that this could take years and that Western allies should continue to provide their support to Kiev amid the ongoing crisis. Meanwhile, mechanics from Zaporizhzhia, which is a town in southeastern Ukraine, are turning rally cars into combat buggies to help the country deal with a shortage of military vehicles. Take a look.
Mechanics in Ukraine are working hard to turn rally cars into vehicles. Vehicles that can be used to fight Russian troops at the front line. Vehicles that can help their country battle the war. These mechanics earlier converted around 30 ordinary passenger cars for the military. Now they are completing work on a combat buggy. This buggy has an engine made from a Russian Lada model, a model used by Ukrainian rally drivers. With an armoured body and an upgraded engine, it is designed in a way that soldiers in the front and back can shoot while speeding along the road. To make this buggy an apt choice for the battlefield, they are trying to make the buggy quieter. To do so, they are adding a large hole at the front to shoot with a machine gun.
It was a Model 8, originally a sports car for survival races. The engine and the gearbox here are improved, and there is some serious chip tuning and lock. There was a big iron frame also at the back. There was also only one seat, and it was hard to get up from. There was a door here, and it shut like this. We took all of it away. We put usual seats, added back seats, made a hole here to make it possible to shoot from a machine gun.
If these mechanics are to be believed, this new installation will make the car almost completely inaudible to the enemy.
The goal is to make the car a little more quiet to be able to pass by unnoticed in the places we need to go.
This buggy is developed not only keeping combat in mind, but it also takes Ukrainian soldiers' comfort into account, particularly when it comes to sitting in or getting out of the car. These mechanics are converting rally cars into an armoured car, with a hope to win the ongoing battle. A battle that they are fighting by playing different roles, from mechanics to soldiers and now to war weapon suppliers. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's get some sports news now, and in golf, Matthew Fitzpatrick held off world number one Scottie Scheffler and also Will Zalatoris to win the US Open at the country club in Brookline. Fitzpatrick is the third Englishman to win the tournament in the last 52 years, and he is joining a select group of players whose first win on the PGA Tour came via a major title. Fitzpatrick and Zalatoris teed off with a one-shot lead over defending champion Jon Rahm at 5 under. It was a really congested leaderboard with just 9 players under par ahead of the final round, and gusts of wind that swept through the historic course, making for pretty tricky conditions for the players. World number one Scheffler had a strong start as he birdied 4 of the opening 6 holes to move into the outright lead. Zalatoris looked out of it as he carded back-to-back bogeys on the second and third, but he stayed in contention with 3 birdies after that. Scheffler and Fitzpatrick hit the turn at 6 under, but they both dropped shots on the 10th and 11 holes, and that saw Zalatoris move into the lead after he birdied the 11th. Fitzpatrick drew level with a stunning 40-foot birdie on the 13th hole, and from that point there was really no looking back as he extended his lead with another birdie on the 15th. He took a one-shot lead into the final hole and got into a little bit of trouble as his tee shot found the sand. He responded with an immaculate approach shot and then 2-putted to finish 6 under for the tournament. Zalatoris had his birdie attempt on the 18th to force a playoff for the second consecutive major, but his shot narrowly rolled past the hole to confirm Fitzpatrick as the winner. He was then tearfully joined by his family to celebrate his triumph. He's also the first non-American to win both the US Amateur and the US Open title, and he's the first since Jack Nicklaus to do it on the same golf course.
His mom.
I think there were expectations, but I didn't feel them. In my opinion, the field's such a strong field, so many great golfers playing. But I think for me, obviously the expectations were for me to play well. But I feel like having won the US Amateur here as well, I just felt so comfortable around this place. Nowhere to hit it, nowhere to miss it, yeah, just happy to be unbeaten around this place.
Now, the best round in those tough conditions that I was talking about earlier came from Hideki Matsuyama. The 2021 Masters champion went bogey 3 through his round, and his 5 birdies catapulted him into 4th place at 3 under. That's the 9th time that he'd finished inside the top 10 at one of golf's major. British Open champion Colin Morikawa threw away a second round lead with a 7-over round on Saturday, but he came storming back to finish tied for 5th place with a round of 4 under. Defending champion Jon Rahm faded away with a final round of 4 over that contains just 1 birdie, while Rory McIlroy's wait for a 5th major title, he's been in really good form recently, that's been extended with the Northern Irishman unable to mount a final day charge and finishing tied for 5th with Morikawa at 2 under par.
Yeah, the game's there. I've got one more start next week in Hartford before I go to the Open Championship, and I'll get 2 weeks of good rest before the Open and play some links golf and prepare, and look forward to that. My game's in good shape, so I've got one more chance this year to try to get that major.
And that's all we've got time for today. Thanks very much for joining us. Stay tuned to WION for more updates on global news.
There are many other...